ሰላም ተመልካቾቻችን ሄለን መስፍን ነኝ። እንግዲህ የዛሬ የሄለን ሾው ፕሮግራም ትንሽ ለየት ይላል። ይሄ የሚሆንበት ምክንያት እንግዳዬ ፖኤት ለመን ሲሳይ አማርኛ ስለማይናገር ሙሉ ቆይታችን ከለመን ጋር በእንግሊዝኛ ይሆናል። ይሄንንም እንግዲህ የወሰንበት ምክንያት እንግዲህ የለመን ታሪክ በጣም ደስ የሚል የሚያበረታታና የሚያነቃቃ ታሪክ ስለሆነ ከራሱ አንደበት በራሱ አነጋገር የሱን ታሪክ ከሱ አንደበት እንድትሰሙ እድል ለመስጠት ነው ማለት ነው። እንግዲህ ከይቅርታ ጋር ይሄንን ፕሮግራም በእንግሊዝኛ እንድትከታተሉ ጋብዛችኋለሁ። ከዚህ ፕሮግራም በኋላ እንዳልኩት 9ኛው ሲዝናችንን ጨርሰን በሚቀጥለው በ10ኛው ሲዝን ሌሎች የተለያዩ አዳዲስ ፕሮግራሞችን ደግሞ ይዘንላችሁ እንቀርባለን። ስለዚህ እንግዲህ ይሄንን ፕሮግራም እንድትከታተሉት ጋብዛችኋለሁ።
Lemn Sissay is an award-winning poet, playwright, artist, chancellor, and an MBE. Born to a young Ethiopian woman who wanted him temporarily fostered while she completed her studies in the UK. He was with an adoptive family until he was 12. He would spend the next 5 years in a number of children's homes. He left the foster care system at 17 and released his first book of poetry at age 21. Between the ages of 18 and 32, he searched and found his family members across the world. Lemn is author of several poetry collections, plays and programs for radio and TV, and his work has taken him around the world. He was the first poet commissioned to write for the 2012 London Olympics. His success has brought him 2 doctorates and MBE from the Queen of England for services to literature. Lemn is an inspiration. He blogs openly for personal reasons. I had the pleasure to sit down with the one and only Lemn Sissay to hear him share his extraordinary journey.
If there was ever one to whom you could cry, who would gather each tear and blow it dry, who would offer help on the mountains of time, and who would stop to let each sunset soothe your shades of mind. If there was ever one whom, when you achieve, was there before the dream and even then believed, who would clear the air when it's full of loss and count love before cost.
Lemn Sissay, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here, Helen. It really is.
Wonderful. So a chancellor, an artist, a playwright, a poet, an MBE, the list goes on and on and on. An incredible achievement for someone who started out probably not in the best of environment, a foster care system. You were born to a young Ethiopian mother, 21 years old. Take us back. Let's start with that. How the journey began for Lemn.
Okay, so she flew from Ethiopia as part of the Emperor Haile Selassie's education program.
Right, okay.
In 1966.
Okay.
And she found herself to be pregnant, as many women do at certain times in their lives. And the school that she was at in Oxfordshire, in England, said that they wanted to send her to the other side of the country to have the baby, okay? Now, this was the English school, English-speaking school. She went to the other side of the country, to the north of England, from the south, which is where Oxford is, and she was put in a mother and baby home. These were buildings that were all around the United Kingdom, where women who were pregnant without a husband were placed to have the baby adopted. Okay?
So she would have had to make that decision in order for her to be there?
No.
Or someone else already made that decision?
She was not aware.
Okay. She was
so
not
she
aware.
was being looked after.
Okay.
She gave me to the social worker.
Okay.
And she said, I want him fostered for a short period of time while I study, and then I will take him back to Ethiopia.
Okay.
The social worker then gave me to foster parents and said to them, treat this as an adoption, he's yours forever. His name is Norman.
And that name has a story behind it because it's his name, right?
The social worker named me after himself illegally. My legal name was always Lemn Sissay. So the name on my birth certificate was Lemn Sissay. The name he told my foster parents was Norman. And yes, he named me after himself, yeah.
And that family that adopted you, very deeply religious family, right? Mm-hmm. And you were with them until you were about 11 years old?
12, yeah.
12 years old, okay. What was your earliest memory of life with that family?
I was a very happy child.
Okay.
So I have very happy memories of being with them. They told me that they were my parents forever.
Okay.
And so I
You
just...
believed them, you were a child, of
Yeah,
course,
that's
my
what I do.
parents. Okay.
And so, so my happy memories are like sunny afternoons playing out with my friends in the park and going to Scotland on holiday and smiling. You know, I thought the world smiled and I didn't realize that it was me smiling at the world, smiling back at me.
you.
But I thought, oh, the world smiles. Everybody smiles in the world. So I was that child that lit up a room when I walked into the room. But I thought everywhere was lit up, you know. And I was very happy, really, I think.
So what changed? I mean, you were abruptly taken away from them. I think, from what I understand, there was a question that was asked by them. I don't know what started that question, why they got to that strange question of...
Well, this is happening today in
Okay.
foster families and adopting families
Okay.
in America. I saw a documentary by Dan Rathers about adopted children who were discarded as they became adults. As I started to go through adolescence at 12 years of age, I did what normal 12-year-olds do. Like, I came in late. You know, I was playing out with my friends. I took biscuits from the tin without asking. You know, because you're testing out your personality and stuff. Of
course.
But they viewed this as a sort of, as a betrayal of their love, a betrayal of their adoption, and in turn they betrayed me. They then said, "Well, our love is finished now."
It was conditional.
I didn't know it was conditional. I thought it was, I mean, I couldn't see anything else.
Yeah, of course.
They were my mum and dad. But what happened is they had 3 of their own children, and they had a final one, and that was putting pressure on the family. And the truth is that I was becoming an adolescent while they just had a new baby, and they had 2 in between. I was the oldest of the family. I was the first one. So they decided, so they put me into children's homes, and they said they would never write to me again, and or call me or contact me, and I lost everybody from 12 years of age.
So they were extended family, people that have known you.
I lost
with
everybody.
them. Everybody just cut.
Everybody. Yeah, this is it. Everybody didn't contact me. The point is that I was like an experiment for them. I was an experiment of their Christianity. I was an experiment of their faith. I was an experiment of their beliefs. And when it got hard for them, which it does for most parents will know, most families will know, that it's difficult sometimes when you bring up your child. So it became difficult for them, and they put me into children's homes. And
when did you realize that you were not going back? I mean, that was it.
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't really realize for years that they were never going to call. I couldn't imagine life without them. Now, some people may think it's a great thing to go to England, to be fostered, to be, you know, a lot of people do think this. But you've got to look at what happens to some of those children, you know. By the time I was 17 years of age, I was locked away in a virtual prison. And it's this week, this month, that the men who worked in that place are being questioned by the police for abuse of the children that they were with, that they were looking after. And that's because of me. That's because of my documenting of what happened to me. The point is that do not believe that it's the easy ticket, because I had nobody. You know, I didn't know who my mother was, my father, my sisters, my brothers, my aunts, my uncles. I was locked away. I was beaten. I was denied my own name, Helen.
Tell me about the first time that you found out that was not your name and what that did to your thought process to who you are as a boy.
When I was 17
Yes.
and 18, I got my birth certificate, because then you're no longer a child, you're an adult. So, and I got my birth certificate, and it said this name on it, Lemn Sissay. And I was like, who the heck is that? Because I had no family to give the birth certificate to. They had to give it to me. So their lies would be exposed. When I got my birth certificate, I realized that I'd been lied to all of my life. So I took my name. Lemn Sissay. I did not know any Ethiopians. I didn't meet a black person until I was 9 or 10. I didn't know a black person until I was 16. But I just knew that there was truth in my name.
So to just take you back, I think there's a lot that we don't understand about the foster care system, especially, you know, a majority of our viewership being in Ethiopia. We don't have that, you know, standardized institution the way we know it that they have here in the Western world, right? What do you feel is the most misunderstood about children that grow up in that care system?
The most misunderstood fact between Ethiopians regarding the foster system in England and in Europe and in America is that if you give your child away, you may never ever see them again. There is no thought in the foster parents that child will ever return to you. And in fact, they will change his or her name. They will tell him or her quite often that where they come from is a bad place, that it is dark, that there are no...
And you're lucky to be in this environment.
Absolutely. And they will shorten their names, they will change their names, they will try to hide them from themselves. They will make them literally hate the place that they're from. And that means that they will hate the people that they're from. So you have to know that that is the environment that you're putting your child into, unless you stipulate, unless you say, you know, no, I want my child back when they're 18 or 19. I want them to know who I am. You know, it's very important. But even when you do that, some of the NGOs do not follow through with what your needs are.
Because it's expedited process. It's done. It's a done deal to the next child, you know. That's what
I know a woman in Ethiopia who was tracking this. You've got to know that this isn't just in Ethiopia. This happens in Bulgaria to children. It happened in Russia. It happened in China. So, like, there are NGOs, like, ready to go all over the world to wherever there are babies available. They'll take them. And I do think of it as abduction, I'm afraid. But I must also say this, that adoption and fostering are... It is the greatest thing that a human being can do, I think.
When it's done right.
When it's done right.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll continue where we stop. Take a quick break. We're back with our guest today, Lemn Sissay. And we're talking about, we started out with your journey, with your earliest childhood story, a fascinating journey. And wanted to make sure I go back and touch on, in Ethiopia or anywhere in the world right now, there are orphans abandoned children. In many occasions in Ethiopia, these kids are looked after by NGOs or religious organizations, or sometimes a family member will take a child in to help, giving them home or shelter or whatever. In general, people are good. They take their responsibility seriously, and they take care and they provide for their children. But in many other instances, these children that are taken in, even in family situations, they end up not being one of the children. They end up either being a domestic help, or they end up working, and sometimes these kids are invisible to us. We don't even see the pain and the agony, the misunderstanding, and just who they are, for what they are. We don't see that. So I want to go back, if you could take me to, 12-year-old boy in an institution. What was that like for you? And how did the adults around you respond to who you are? I mean, I want us to paint that picture of what that was like for you to not be seen and loved and touched, but people that care for you.
One of the things in the children's homes they didn't do was touch us, and I remember realizing how much I wanted to be held, really simply held. That sense of being invisible is horrible, because we, as children, we are growing adults. We want to be seen. We want to be touched emotionally. We want to be touched physically. And I remember very clearly feeling like I was becoming invisible, like I was being rubbed out. And that sense of worthlessness also is right on the edge of self-harm. It drives you definitely towards depression. I'm sure there are many people, and mental illness, and simply for the fact that people can't admit who you are and where you're from. One of the greatest things that happened to me is that I accepted who I was and where I was from. And people would say, oh, don't talk about your past. Oh, no, it doesn't matter. And actually it did matter, because it's who I was, There are so many of us who, we are incredible. We who do not have families, we who were fostered and adopted, and we who were told that we were invisible or not to talk about our pasts, because we see families at their best and at their worst, and we kind of,
I agree with you, and I think sometimes maybe, do you feel like maybe you're a pleaser, because sometimes you just want to be accepted so much by people, but then sometimes if you feel like you're not misunderstood, a typical 12-year-old, a 13-year-old may act up in very different ways, but when you are adopted or when you're in a foster care system, you don't have that luxury of being a typical 13 and 14-year-old. So that adolescent stuff that you mentioned earlier is exaggerated. It's really their way of, if children are not able to articulate what they're feeling, they act out in different ways, and sometimes we may not understand it. Would you say that?
Yeah, I just found myself surrounded by lots of lies from lots of people. Lies, just plain old lies, and a lack of care, and an assumption that I was a problem.
That's key.
That's the thing. It's like if you're a fostered child, you're a problem, you're a drain on the resources of the family or of the organisation. And I remember thinking very clearly, this is not true. I am not a problem. I am just born. I was just born. I didn't do anything wrong,
I just showed up.
I just showed up, man. And this idea that we are a problem for the family or the street or the community is wrong. I think that we are a solution waiting to happen. We're kind of all right. We're kind of good people. Moses was adopted. Moses was adopted.
Right.
Jesus was an immaculate conception. Therefore, he had a stepmother in Mary of sorts, and he had a father who wasn't his father in Joseph. Muhammad from the Quran, he was fostered by his grandparents. It's like Superman was a foster child. I know he's not real, but there are so many of us, and we need to look at our faith. Okay, whatever your faith is, we need to look at our faith and find the adopted and fostered children in there. They are all incredible.
So is your way, and I've heard
Moses was incredible.
Yeah, he's a leader. I mean,
right,
yeah,
and a leader.
Yeah.
And Moses was adopted. Moses was the child who was without his parents. We need to look at that, and then look at that child and see them as
potential?
a Moses. So we have got something incredibly special in our midst here. Let us talk his story so that he can become everything that he needs to be. We need to do that, because if we don't do that, we look at that child as if they are a problem that we have to solve. And no child should be born with that as the assumption on their very living.
Their existence, yeah.
We deserve to be related to the heroes and heroines in our culture and in our faith. You know why we're invisible? Because nobody ever said to me that Moses was adopted. That's why I'm invisible, because nobody ever made the connection. Nobody ever said Superman was a foster child. Nobody ever said that all of these great characters in our stories that we tell were fostered or adopted, It's important. Well, let's go through the Bible and take a look at all of the people who are without their family, or where the parents were killed, or whether, et cetera, et cetera. We are a part of life.
That's true. That's true. So at 17...
And we are a wonderful...
Of course, and look at Lemn, right? So you left the system at 17.
Yes, I did, yeah.
Okay. There was a time that I read somewhere, or I heard somewhere, where you were walking bare feet for a long period of time.
Isn't this amazing?
What was that about?
Well, Prince Alamahu, was also a foster child. He's the son of Theodros, of King Theodros. And Theodros, the king, he was also barefoot at times. And I did not know I was at the time.
Okay.
But my way of rebelling against the system that caused me so much pain was to go barefoot. I don't know why I did it. It's crazy.
But you did it. It was painful, I'm sure.
I did it for a year.
Okay.
And everybody said to me, because it snows in England. I know it snows in Ethiopia as well, right? In the mountains.
Sometimes it gets really cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it snows
really
in England. Like on the Christmas card,
okay.
the snow.
Yeah, of course.
And
you were
they said, I bet you can't do that in the snow. That's all anybody said. So I waited for a year. Then the snow came, and then I walked around the town in the snow, in my bare feet.
Frostbite.
Yeah, and then I put my shoes back on, but I did walk in the snow.
Okay.
Now, if anybody says to me, I bet you can't do X, Y, or Z, I think I bet I can.
Okay, so not to self, right? Okay. So I want to go back to the time you decided to look for your mother, this figure that you've heard about.
Yeah.
Can you tell me first how you found her and what the first conversation was like with her?
Well, my mother, she left Ethiopia because of 1974. So she was in the Gambia. She worked for the UN. And I found her through a guy called Mikhail Gebre Selassie, I think his name was. Gebre Felema.
Okay.
Okay, good. That was his name. And I wrote these letters and I got a message back, and there it was. So I called her from England, and I said, how do you say I'm your son?
Oh, your son, yeah.
They're not natural words to, hi, I'm your son. Do you remember me?
Wow.
I think that's what I said.
What did she say?
She said, she did, yeah. I think it was quite a shock for her.
Sure.
And then I said, I'm coming to see you. I'd like to come see you. So then I bought my ticket And I flew to the Gambia.
Okay.
And
Was she by herself?
she was by herself, yeah, in a place called Fajara, which is a not really nice area. It was then.
Okay.
And I was 21, and there was some people who worked with her on the plane, and there was a black Mercedes waiting for them, and so they said, "We'll take you to her house." They drove me through the Gambian night with the red dust, sort of like wings coming from the side of this black Mercedes. That, yeah, and I met her.
What did she say when she first saw you?
She gave me a hug.
Okay.
And then we walked up the steps to the house, and she said, "Can we not talk about this? I've got a visitor."
And who was the visitor?
It was somebody from the UN,
Okay.
an English white lady, maybe American.
Okay.
So I then sat in the front room with her like I'm sat with you now, and I was making light conversation with her friend or colleague while she sat there.
Looking at you?
Yeah. So,
That was your first encounter?
yeah, it was.
Well, see, we have this culture of secrecy, right? Where we sometimes cover it or disguise it as politeness. We keep certain things that we probably don't want to face covered up.
Yep.
We deny
Yeah,
them instead of facing the circumstances, facing the truth,
Yeah.
and just dealing with whatever that may come from it,
Yep.
which could be healing in many occasions, but we just live in that life. And for your mother, you weren't told about your brothers and sisters, or she told them about you, but she told them as you were a cousin or somebody, right?
Yeah, so I was.
So what was that?
So, well, my brothers and sisters came back from Paris for Christmas. It was Christmas.
Okay.
And she asked me would I be their cousin, because she didn't want to tell them straight away. She actually did say she was going to tell them on Christmas Day. I've got to tell you this. And then, but I was so, it was driving me crazy, so I left before Christmas Day. I couldn't handle it.
You couldn't handle, being in the same place with her?
I couldn't handle being a cousin to these people who were my brother and sister. And I didn't understand how.
What were your expectation? What were you expecting
Well, I
when
wasn't
you go to
expecting anything,
Okay.
actually. You know, people would say to me, "Oh, you know, it may not be good," and blah blah. And I was like, "Well, I don't know what it's going to be, so I'll just go with it." But I didn't expect to be. I tried to handle it for everybody. I tried to not. I didn't tell them that I was their brother. I didn't. I didn't push her. I simply thought that this is the best it could be, and I had nothing to compare it with. So I don't. I'm not blaming her.
Mm-hmm.
She had no rules either. She had no.
She was not prepared for you to come in this manner?
Yeah, she wasn't prepared for
Okay.
me. But also, she didn't know. How could she know how to be? You know, it's very easy for us. You know, we can all sit, listen to this story, and think, "Oh well, yeah. Why didn't the mother hold out her hands and accept the blah?" Life is not like that. You know, any family now will have a story, a secret, a thing they don't talk about.
Oh, every family
right?
has that, right?
And you know, by the way, there is always one person in one generation, right, who says, "I need to know the secret. I need to get in. I need to go back. I need to question everybody and everything." So these secrets in our families, they do not go away. Somebody will die, somebody will be born, somebody will die, somebody will be born, and one person that's born will say, "Okay, that's
Enough
it.
of this.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it."
yeah.
And everybody else will say, "Please do not speak
Yeah.
about it. Whatever you do, why don't you just shut up?" They'll cast
Go
them out
away.
of the family.
Yeah.
They'll tell them to go away. They'll call them crazy. But that one person will go back, and that person was me in my family. You know?
You had a poem that I saw, Elephant in the Room.
Yeah. That's right.
It's pretty much what it was, right, in that?
That's right. Yeah, it's actually not about that. It's not about the story, Elephants in the Room. But
It's not,
actually,
but it was very
no,
connected, right?
It's totally
You want to
connected.
walk around, you know, stuff,
Absolutely.
but you have this big elephant in the room and nobody's
Absolutely.
addressing it. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and then we're going to talk about how you met your father's side of the family. Okay?
Okay,
We'll be
cool.
back. We're back with Lemn Sissay. We talked about the encounter with mom.
Yes.
So your father, you know, I saw this BBC documentary that you did.
Yes.
Incredibly moving, deeply emotional. Could really see, you know, who Lemn was at that time, what you were feeling, what it was like for you to discover, and you just put it all out there.
I had no choice. I had to put it out there.
Okay. And that was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
You know, just very emotional for me to watch. And I'm
Yeah.
sure anyone that has watched it and, you know, watching you go through what you had to go through to discover who you are, it's just fascinating. And I see that you traveled to Ethiopia. You found out about your father. I mean, you went through serious search, you know, went through his job. You went to
That's right.
discover, ask people, who is my father? I want to know, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then you discovered, you know, by the time you found out he was not around, he had passed away already.
That's right,
So
yeah.
tell me what that was like for you to find out that this person that you've been looking forward to meeting
Yeah.
for such a long time.
Well, I remember...
You were not prepared, obviously.
No, I wasn't prepared for him having not... I wasn't prepared that he would be dead. But at the same time, sometimes when people pass away, you learn more about them. Because people tell you things that they wouldn't have told you
If they were around.
if he was around.
Interesting, right?
And many of us will know somebody who's passed away, and after they passed away, you learn new facts about the person that give you a different perspective. It's a fascinating process. A fascinating process. So I came to know my father as somebody who was just not there anymore. So it's almost like everybody had a memory of my father.
Was it this larger-than-life figure?
Yeah, but yes, it was. But what they did, each person threw dust into the air, and it caught the light, and I could see a little bit of him. And then somebody else would throw a different coloured dust in the air, and I would see another. And this image, this very defined image of him, started to appear, and it continues to appear.
So you went to his house to meet his wife and your half-brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
One thing that struck me when I saw it, what you
Yeah.
said, you know, his wife said, when I see his face,
Yeah.
I'll know if that's his son or not.
Yeah.
What does that
I mean,
say to you?
I loved that. 'Cause I
Okay.
was like, no, I like a definite statement.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I like a, you know, and I thought, wow, that's beautiful, you know, because my life is not going to change if she believes I am his son or not.
Right.
I just need answers. Am I his son or am I not? You know, so she immediately knew that it was me, you know.
And your sister, that embrace.
Yeah, we're really good
Gosh.
friends now to this
Okay.
day. I saw her in Addis only a couple of weeks ago. My sister Willetta is just an incredible woman. She works at the World Bank. She comes to all of my performances in Addis. She's an extraordinary woman, because I looked like my father who died. So I bring back all the memories to people in a good way and probably not in a good way because they lost him.
What about him was surprising to you about his character and who he is? There are some similarities that you see based on what people told you about him.
Well, he was a larger than life character, and he was part of the kind of the pride of Ethiopia. You know,
he was a pilot.
He was a pilot in the late 60s, mid 60s, early 70s. It was a great time for pilots. By the way, it was a great time for pilots anywhere in the world. So it's a great time for pilots if you were American Airlines, etc., etc. The clothes were great, the travel was great. But this was, Ethiopian Airlines particularly, was about the expansion of Ethiopia. It was the jewel in the emperor's crown regarding expansion. And Ethiopian Airlines is an advert for Ethiopia, flying all over the world. So my father, you know, so the pilots were the kind of the CEOs of this great advertising company for a country, for an entire country. So you have to carry that pride by doing your job incredibly well and by how you walk. So I think my father was a big personality, this I know. And so he enjoyed the role. And, you know, it was a very liberated time. So, you know, there was jazz happening in Addis, and he was part of a clique, I guess. He had great pride in what he did. But he was part of a generation that bridged an older Ethiopia and a newer Ethiopia, I think, in some ways.
And you've gone back several times to Ethiopia over the years,
I go
right?
I go back as much as I can, and I go back like once a year on average. So, and I have done on average since 1995. So, you know, I feel at home in Addis.
Okay.
A kind of home.
Kind of a second home, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I travel all the time around the world to do my poetry and speeches and what have you. So I've turned out to be a bit of a nomad. I can live out of a suitcase quite easily, you know.
So those fictional characters that you mentioned earlier, some of us, you know, maybe in Ethiopia may not be aware of some of these characters, but let's say, you know, a young little boy is watching this show right now and trying to connect to, listen, I'm in this environment that I don't see a way out. I'm in this environment where there's no promising hope for me. If you were talking to that child, maybe not exposed to these wonderful characters you mentioned, what would you say to that child?
Well, there is a children's home that I go to in Addis, which I just love. It's run by a guy called Fish. It's called Perfan, actually. It's called Perfan. And in fact, strangely, I just blogged about it today. And I go there to meet the young people there. Fish puts them through the education system so that they get as best an education as they can. What do I say to them? I would say what I would say to any child, which is be the best you can be. Try to understand the nature of right and wrong is inside you. It's not. Do you know what I mean? It's your call. Yeah, it's your call, man. The bottom line, it stops with you, you know. So make those decisions carefully and cherish them as well. You know, if you haven't got a family to give you moral guidance, then it has to come down to you. But what a total gift that you are responsible for your moral kind of growth. I mean, this is a powerful thing. And also to have fun, because we deserve it. And to cry, to be okay with crying. You know, being a strong person is not about not crying.
Acknowledging whatever feeling that is you're feeling at that time.
Be the feeling that you're having. Don't try to hide everything, you know. Be okay with tears. I am afraid of people who can't cry. Because they're so, there is a certain suppression, which is a kind of dangerous thing.
You tell your story very openly. You know, you talk about things that happened, you know, your mother's, you know, story and your family. Do you see, and I'm asking this, you know, because I think it's important for people to understand, but from your perspective, is this therapy for you, or?
No, I'll tell you now
Is it your way of processing this, or is something different?
My art is like an expression of of total spirit and total strength, which includes vulnerability. But if, you know, I did some things, I got some therapy when I was in my, actually 30s, so quite late in many ways.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was the best thing, one of the best things that I ever did in my adult life. And also, you know, it takes the strong people to get help. It's so easy to not ask for help and to think that that's strength. It's not. We ask God for help. So that's one thing I did. The other thing that I did that is quite amazing is I stopped drinking alcohol.
Okay.
Now, I want to tell you something. I have a good time in my life, okay?
Oh, I'm
I
sure.
know good people. I like to party. I have fun and I have a laugh. Even though my story is what it is, like, it's very important.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. But I used to think that I had to have a beer to do those things, and that
Which could be a distractive
yes,
way of dealing with
absolutely. And
pain.
because of what I do, there's always lots of bars, lots of free alcohol. So I think those two things, doing those two things, have really been good for me. We have to be our own family. Actually, all of us have to be our own family.
That was going to be my next question to you. What is family to you?
I don't have a family to go to at Christmas, or even now, if I'm ill, I don't really have a family to who would just come to me. So I think I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I do know that I'm very happy with what I've got, and I'm okay with that. So it may sound like really sad to people, but actually it's not. I'm all right, you know. And I got good friends.
Okay.
And
You are at peace with it.
Yeah,
you are at peace with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never known what it's like to have a family.
That traditional
I've
family.
never known what it's like.
Okay.
So, you know.
I get that.
And I'm cool with that.
Okay.
There's a lot of us around.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're back with Lemn Sissay, and I want to talk now about your work. It's just fantastic, incredible journey, your life in poetry.
Yes.
You were here yesterday in Washington, D.C., had a beautiful...
It was beautiful with Tacoma Park.
Tacoma Park.
Introduced by the mayor of Tacoma Park. And
it's in Maryland here in the suburb of Washington, D.C.
That's right. And the congressman as well came.
Sold out event. We couldn't even get in.
I know. I'm sorry about that. If I'd have known, you should have called me, man.
I should have.
I would have come and pick you up. I would come in the car, put you down.
I missed it. Next time.
Next time. It's a deal.
So how did poetry? Okay, so it's in essence, it was your ticket out, I guess, or it's a journey that brought you to this, where you are right now, a chancellor. I mean, you're at the top of your game,
Top of my game.
It is.
Boom.
Yes.
There it is.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Top of my game. Now we're talking. Now this interview is rocking.
It's over.
Come on.
So tell me, how did that, would you say poetry chose me or I chose poetry? And how did that start? Yeah.
No, poetry chose me. I always knew I was a poet.
Okay.
From the age of 12 years of age, I knew that I was a poet. I wrote poetry all the time. My teachers knew that I wrote poetry. Friends knew. I would write for friends' parents who, when somebody passed away, I would write for a poem that would go in the newspaper for them. I mean, I was born a poet. I was, I didn't think, I want to be a poet. I want to be famous. I didn't want to be anything except for that I wanted to write. Writing poetry was like a way of seeing the world, being excited by the world, and also being able to underline the truth. The truth is in poetry. If you look in the Bible, You find poetry in the Psalms, you know, the same with the Quran and most religions. You know, poetry bridges between the spiritual and the physical. And I needed that, you know, so poetry was like my family, actually. That's, if you want to know what family is for me.
Poetry. Okay.
Yeah. All of the memories of where I was and when are in the poems. I don't have the family to remember me.
It's beautiful. And then you, every day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I saw your Facebook page.
Oh,
every
yeah.
morning. How does that?
I do a morning tweet.
Morning.
Yeah, I do a morning tweet, a morning
What was
message, a
this
morning
morning's?
poem. I can't remember. Oh, the morning. Yeah, this morning's was a piece about night slipping from the moorings, yeah, and the night constantly slipping from the moorings in the sea. It's difficult to explain. You would have to see the tweet because poetry is condensed language. You know, I write one every single morning to celebrate the day as a new day, and it helps me to live in the present, not the past, not the future, the present. Yeah, I'm alive as a writer.
And you come out, I mean, you have this just ball of energy. You just walked in there and that's it. Captivate the audience with that smile. That's it, right?
But I'm with my friends and family.
Right.
You know, when I write, I'm with my friends and family. I really am. I can't tell you how deeply I feel that. It's as close to family is when I'm reading my poetry on stage as I did last night. You know, I'm with my friends, so come on, folks, you know, audience, be with my friends, because I want to be with them as well, you know.
And so your relationship, your long-standing relationship is almost related through poetry?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's a great feeling, you know. It's a great feeling. I could say, you know, you could look at it and think, well, that's quite sad, because it's not. But I don't know what I've not got. I do know that through poetry, I saw the absolute possibility of kind of living forever.
You're a chancellor right now?
Yes, I am.
Tell me about that.
The University of Manchester is an incredible place. It's a Russell Group university, which is the equivalent of the Ivy League in America. It has a great social responsibility. I intend to get more people who've been in care, foster children, who are becoming adults into the university, and trying to start a few PhD scholarships. And so if there are any kind of any people who want to contribute to that, that would be incredible.
So it's a foundation?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's gonna be scholarships for care leavers. That's one of the things that I'm in discussions with the university right now. We are the discoverers of graphene, which is a new material, which is 20 times stronger than steel, and it's now once it's been discovered, the two professors who discovered it both became Nobel Prize winners, and they are now making graphene into applying it to things like the skin of aeroplanes, light bulbs, batteries. There's going to be batteries that are thinner than that you can sort of put around your wrist or what have you. It's it's an exciting time to be Chancellor of the University of Manchester. It's an expanding university as well. It's international. There are 219 countries that hold alumni from the University of Manchester. Okay. I've met Ethiopian students there already, which is exciting.
You're also an MBE. Many of us don't know what that is. Can you tell us about that?
An MBE
That's a great honor,
it's an honour. It was for services to literature. It's a member of the Order of the British Empire. It's a medal which is given to you from the Queen of England. So I had to go to Buckingham Palace. I've met her twice now, and she bestowed me. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Full circle,
cool.
huh?
Yeah,
My.
Isn't that amazing that the boy from the children's homes, you know, Bob Marley said, the stone that the builder refused shall be the head's cornerstone. And, you know, it is true that those people who are supposed to be outside of society are the ones who can make the greatest changes to what's needed inside that society, you know.
One thing that, you know, at one point that I wanted to make sure I get across with you is that you talk about owning your background regardless of what it is. Have you now eventually, you know, years and years later, your adoptive parents, have you made peace with that? Have you owned all of that? Have you gone through that, and are you at peace with it? Have you forgiven them? How is that?
I have...
To put a bow on this, you know?
I've forgiven my foster parents,
Okay.
and I've been to see them to forgive them. And you know, the biggest thing that I learned about all of this big story is to let it all go. You can't carry your story as if it's a great burden through every friendship, every relationship, every conversation with God. You know, it's so important to be able to live in the present and to be able to allow your story to be whatever it is, to settle, to be at peace, to ask yourself, why are we all so fascinated with this idea of forgiveness? Because I'll tell you why. There's magic in those hills.
Because it's healing you, right?
Forgiveness, I used to think of forgiveness as this big rock, and I'm like, I'm not going to, like, how can I carry that? I'm not going to forgive you for what you did to me. I'm not going to forgive you for taking my parents away and my family and taking my Ethiopia and my roots and my soul away. I'm not going to forgive you for that. Because it's a big rock.
Want to hold on to it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I want to hold on to it. So any relationship, I'd be like, yeah, hi. You know, to my girlfriends, you know, I'd be like, yeah, and welcome to my rock, you know.
This is me.
You know, yeah, this is me.
Gotta love
this
me.
is my rock, yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot live without it. And forgiveness says, yes, you can and you must, you know.
It's not erasing it, but it's being at peace with it, like we said earlier.
Forgiveness is such a powerful thing.
Yes.
It's such
freeing,
a powerful thing. Oh my gosh. Because you have got to genuinely forgive somebody else to feel total release in your spirit.
It's powerful.
I never knew that was going to happen.
Oh. And it was recently, right?
It's the past few years, you know.
Good.
But I never knew that. I've been given the gift of life.
Beautiful. You told me a story earlier that Afur Tekle told you. I thought that was very interesting what he said to you. I thought it was just very profound. That if you don't mind sharing it with our viewers, if you could tell us that, that'd be great.
A few days before he passed away, Afur Tekle came to my performance at the British Council in Addis Ababa, and he spoke there, and he said to me, you know, you are very good, Lemn. Your performance was great, you know. You travel the world, people love you, we loved you here, it's wonderful. He said, but you haven't found your keys. He said, I found my keys. He said, they're placed at certain points in your life, and if you don't see them, you carry your story. Your story, Lemn, you know, he said, you carry your story, but you can't find your keys. I had no idea what he meant by this, you know. But I did know that a man of his age and a man of his stature would never waste his time telling me something if he did not want me to find out what he meant.
So did you find it?
I just took the story away from me back to England and to everywhere else that I was, and I didn't get it. To find my first key, I had to forgive my foster parents. I had to feel myself released, and there it was, as plain as day, my first key.
Beautiful.
And it is, I believe, to truly live in the present.
What better way to end but with that? Lemn, it was a pleasure. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing many, many more.
It's an honor, Helen. Thanks.
Thank you.